Well, we made it. The year is 2025, and things are not looking great. We're starting off the year strong with a ban on well, my generation and younger generations will probably consider the last bastion of free speech and community building. If you don't know and you're watching this in the year 3000, we used to have some liberties in the United States of America. Nowadays, not so much. We have a system that organizes itself around the needs and wants of the many, I should say the few, at about 800 people who have distanced themselves from the rest of humanity via the accumulation of capital. Now, I'm hoping that if you're watching this in the year 3000, you don't even know what capital is, and you're as perplexed as I was when I started to understand that what really matters is how much you can buy people. That's right. In the year 2025, we don't have outright slavery, as we once called it, but compared to what I hope is a utopian future, we do have a handful of people backed up by what we call a government, a centralized government, essentially giving freedoms to those 800 or so people to do with the rest of us what they will. And we've entered 2025 with the banning and or destruction of a little known app called TikTok. This app, maybe you'll find some historical records about it. I'm not sure how distorted it will be by the time the year 3000 rolls around, but we were singing and dancing on it, but we were also having conversations, and much like the people of antiquity, we were having public discourse about how things run and how things should run and how things might be improved. Unfortunately, the powers that be did not like that very much. And unfortunately for the rest of us, the powers that be have lulled the majority of us into a deep, deep slumber in the sense of wanting to exercise our free will. There was a lot of outrage recently because we were all collectively starting to realize that these mechanisms were in place, but not just that we were powerless to stop it, although that's not entirely true. The other thing a lot of us were starting to realize was that we could do something about it, and that we could, just by having these conversations, were having the power and applying the necessary pressure to make changes happen. However, with the destruction of this app, which was centralizing our strength and our pressure that we were applying to these powers that be, a lot of people have simply given up. And I'm no psychic, I'm no Nostradamus, I don't know if you know who that is, but it was not, it was not going to last. This is not the first time that something like this happens, and it won't be the last. So that was the start of 2025. Here in a few hours, we will also, in the United States of America, install a new president for his second non-consecutive term by the name of Donald J. Trump, who also is not a fan of free speech if it opposes the powers that be. Now, what's ironic is when he was first elected, he ran on the promise of what he called draining the swamp. He was not a career politician, which is another concept we'll get into in another video. But if you're watching this in the year 3000, a career politician is someone who makes their living as simply being part of the bureaucracy that empowers the oligarchs, it empowers the powers that be. Because politicians themselves, they're paper pushers. They have no real power. So this guy, who himself, another irony, was a very wealthy person, came from a wealthy family, ran on the policy of draining the swamp, which would take away power, supposedly, from these powers that be. Unfortunately, this ended up not being the case. It just made his affluent friends richer and himself richer. And when he ran again, many of his previous supporters thought that he would finish the work that he started. Unfortunately, I don't foresee that being the case. Unfortunately, he ran on similar platforms, similar messaging, but within hours of being elected, showed his true colors, and many are regretting having voted him in. So this is week 1 of the year 2025, and if you're watching this in the year 3000, it'll likely be one for the history books. It'll likely be the end of free speech. It'll likely be the start of worldwide tensions between the United States and the rest of the world, and it will likely be the starting point for when something that we call communism have the opportunity to step in, but likely won't. And I say that on the back of the TikTok ban. Many of users of this app have fled to another app owned by this very same government that America purports to save us from, to protect us from. If there ever was a time for the American Communist Party to step in with strong messaging and rally support behind its cause, now would be the time. But much like its distant cousin, the Democratic Party, they won't, because they are pussies and they're scared of ruffling the feathers of the status quo. So nothing's gonna change. We're on a slow march to the death of a nation, and much like I mentioned earlier, we won't be literal slaves, but we will be enslaved to corporate profit till the end of this country, which again will likely come soon, as this is the start of the end, because the person that's been elected is seeking to isolate us from the rest of the world and seeking no partnerships, imposing harsh tariffs, imposing bans on travel and things of that nature. So 2025 will likely be the year where it all starts to end.